One thing we cannot do is remain silent, because as we have discovered, silence is the voice of complicity. Our silence as clergy basically says it's okay for women to continue to sit in the back of the Catholic bus. It's okay for us to say to you, you need not apply. That's what our silence says very clearly. During these last 20 years, really, in working on the SOA watch in the movement, that I began to meet many devout Catholic women in our church who started to share with me their call to the priesthood. And being your typical male priest, I was a little threatened by what I was hearing. Well, really, the more women I met, the more humbled I became. And really, it started to keep me awake at night. What I realized that was during those many years of our priestly formation, we never asked that question. Why couldn't women be with us in this seminary, ordained with us? It never came up. It's amazing. And all priests must ask, beginning with the Pope and working its way down to every priest in the world. Who are we as men to say that our call to the priesthood is valid, but yours as women is not? Who are we as men to negate God's call of women to the priesthood? Our all-powerful God, who has given us life in the cosmos, is certainly capable of calling women to the priesthood. What does the Vatican say about what I'm saying and so many are saying now? I'm not alone. On my flight here, I picked up the New York Times, front page, 3-page article, really, in depth. New York Times, CBS News poll. And once again, there are many facts and findings. And I was very happy, really, to read that the majority of the Catholics for the last 20 years, 60% of Catholics, according to this poll, believe that women should be ordained. And a little greater percentage, the majority of Catholics, believe that priests should be allowed to marry. Now, what does the Vatican say here? The principal argument for not ordaining women they give us over the years, especially more recently, is that Jesus, this man Jesus, only called male apostles. Well, this is not accurate. We know as people of faith of the Catholic tradition and other faith traditions that the resurrection is the very core of Christianity. Our theologians told us in the seminary that without the resurrection, Jesus would have been proven a fraud. We would not have Christianity today. Who did Jesus choose as the first witness to his resurrection? None other than Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was chosen also to bring, and other women, to bring the good news of his resurrection to the male apostles. Where were they? They were hiding, the four Gospels remind us. They were hiding behind closed doors, locked doors, because of fear. I remember in the seminary, somehow they never preached it. They left that part out. Whenever we talk, the Easter readings. Mary went on to become well known as the apostle to the apostles. When the women brought the good news, the men did not believe the women, that they were chosen to be leaders in the community. 2,000 years later, we men still don't believe what women are saying to us. But it's happening. The movement is not going away. It's, as Patricia Friesen, who I was just with in speaking in Victoria, Canada a couple weeks ago, she said it's unstoppable. And that is my experience. It's become very clear to me that at the very root of our church's teaching that excludes women from the priesthood is this issue of sexism. Sexism, as we know, like racism, is a sin. And no matter how hard we may try to justify any form of discrimination, and there are many, in the end, it is always wrong. It's immoral. What we have here is a grave injustice. A grave injustice against women who are being called by God to the priesthood. A grave injustice against our church in the light of hundreds of churches closing because of a priest shortage. And most of all, a grave injustice against our loving God who is calling women to the priesthood. This is serious stuff. Injustice, it's serious. It's serious. It doesn't get any more serious. What do you and I do when we see an injustice very clearly and for what it is, and the suffering that it causes others? When our 25th anniversary arrived to the priesthood, I simply sent a message, a personal letter to all of my classmates, just saying that in conscience I couldn't attend. When we will start ordaining women in our church, I will gladly attend. It is then that we can celebrate. And then there was the trip to Rome. I was invited to speak on the SOA and the injustice of U.S. foreign policy at a religious conference in Rome a few years ago. And my last day there, I was invited to go on Vatican radio to speak about this issue. And it was a live interview for 15 minutes, going out in 4 different languages. And right there in St. Peter's Square, right across is the Papa's residence. And I had another 2 minutes to go. And I just knew this moment would never come back. And I just put it out there. We've been talking about justice for the last 13 minutes and the injustice of foreign policy in Latin America, of the United States. And I just said there will never be justice in our Catholic Church until women can be ordained. And I said, too, that our church's teaching simply cannot stand up to scrutiny. If we really analyze it, what we will find is that sin of sexism, and it's wrong. And I had a couple more things to say, but it was not to be. The manager came in and just did this, and that Gregorian chant clicked in. And I remember the guy doing the translating, actually, he was fearful of I'm saying this, not you, you're the translator. And one other thing, there was a Jesuit coming in from the airport into to Vatican Square there. He's in a taxi listening to the interview, and they're talking about the ordination of women. And he said, God, there's a coup taking place at the Vatican.